Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November 1st, 2016 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order, and I hope that everyone had a wonderful Halloween. If you haven't already done so, there are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. Please feel free to pick one up and follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment under item 5, which is relegated for public comments of a general nature. If any members of the audience have any questions or comments of a general nature at that time, we'd ask that you come down to the podium, tell us who you are, and we'll welcome hearing from you. But first, it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, so we would ask everyone to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us. Now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace. Commissioner Earl.
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Mayor Tully.
Here, thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of council meetings of the past. We have 2 sets of minutes to review and approve tonight. Our executive session minutes for approval only from October 11th, 2016, and our regular village council meeting minutes from October 18th, 2016. If there are no changes, corrections, or comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve both, please.
Mayor Tully, I move that we approve the executive session minutes from October 11th and the council meeting minutes from October 18th, 2016 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved unanimously. Awesome. That brings us to item 4, which pertains to proclamations. And we have one proclamation tonight that is in celebration of one of our very important, iconic, not-for-profit organizations in town. Hard to believe, but the Grove Foundation is celebrating its 25th anniversary of supporting recreation and outdoor enjoyment in the village of Downers Grove. And I was looking at the website and the list of things that the Grove Foundation has done over the years, and it's a long one and an admirable one. And I think that we are a better community because of all their efforts, both past and present. And in honor of that, I would like to read a proclamation and then remind everyone that there's a celebration this week with respect to the Grove Foundation's anniversary, and we have a number of members of the board of the Grove Foundation here tonight. So I'll read the proclamation, and then I would invite all of you to please come up, and we'll do a photograph, and then I'll hang on to this and present it at the anniversary celebration. Whereas the Grove Foundation, a non-for-profit organization, has been supporting the Downers Grove community since 1991. And whereas the Grove Foundation is celebrating its 25th anniversary on Wednesday, November 2nd, and whereas the Grove Foundation supports programs promoting recreational, educational, and community experiences through collaborative efforts, and whereas the Grove Foundation developed Helping Children Grow, a 5th grade recognition program, and whereas other efforts of the Grove Foundation include Lyman Woods Interpretive Experience, CSPAR, Helping Girls Navigate Adolescence, the Grove Players, the Downers Grove Chamber of Commerce Attainable Futures, Community Adult Daycare, Senior Suburban Orchestra, and many more. As I told you, the list was long and impressive. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim tomorrow, Wednesday, November 2nd, 2016, as Grove Foundation in the Village of Downers Grove, and congratulate the Grove Foundation and all their members on their 25th anniversary and extend best wishes for their future. So if you'd please come down, come on up. It'll be my honor to present this proclamation to you, and we'll get a quick photo so all the folks at home can see. How are you? How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, so you'll find someone much better looking than me to stand in the middle and hold this.
I'll take it, let it up there. Go, Cubs, go.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here tonight, and once again, thank you for all that you do to make the Village of Downers Grove a great place to live, work, learn, and play.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Looking forward to the celebration. That brings us to item 5. As indicated earlier, item 5 is designated for public comment of a general nature. At this time, if there are any members of the audience that have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, I would invite you to please come down to the podium, tell us who you are, and we would welcome hearing from you. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Rich Calavani, 6825 Camden, here representing Friends of the Edwards House. We are holding a landmarking weekend, November 12th and 13th, and on the 12th we'll have a How to Landmark and the Historic Home Program presentation and panel discussion at the Lincoln Center from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And then on the 13th, the Historic Home Tour, where we'll have a number of landmarked homes open for people from the public to come and visit. Probably the best place to check out and sign up would be on our Facebook page, Friends of the Edwards House. So we invite anyone who's interested in historic preservation to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And we do have some exciting historic preservation items on tonight's agenda. Looking forward to those as well. Thank you for sharing that. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to items of a general nature, items not on tonight's agenda? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening.
And since we did start promptly at 7, you have to be kind to
I
me now.
know, you have to jump down. You have to jump down the steps.
Welcome.
My name is Connie Nicholson, and I live at 930 Curtis, which is the Acadia on the Green condo complex. And I first of all just want to say, living in Downers Grove is a spectacular experience. It's wonderful. The decorations, the activities, everything is just terrific. But I would like for you to think about this holiday season when you are putting up the decorations. Last year, well, let me back up just a minute. Being on Mokel is where all of the majority of the train people walk up and down the street. It's a very busy street. And it seems as though it deserves more than one tree with lights on it. And I'd like for you to think about, and I know this is not a big thing, but I'd like for you to think about putting lights on a few more trees on that street, because it really needs something, and it's a major street in Downers Grove. So I just wanted to ask you that. I've thought about it since last Christmas, and I didn't ever write you a letter, so I had to come talk to you instead. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming down and sharing that in person. It's so much warmer than a letter or an email. And we'll look into that and see what we can do. I think it's a splendid idea. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Questions or comments of a general nature? Very good. Well, thanks for the ones that were shared so far. That brings us to item 6, which is reserved for public hearings. And we do have a mandatory public hearing tonight with respect to the village budget. By way of background, the village budget is the proposed budget for fiscal 2017. The budget has been available on the village's website for some time now, and we have discussed it on a number of different occasions. This is yet another opportunity for public input and discussion of the village budget. If you're wondering why we're going through this formal procedure, it's because, in short, village attorney tells us we have to. No, just kidding. It's required by law. So I will introduce the procedures for the public hearing for the proposed 2017 fiscal year budget for the village of Downers Grove. This public hearing will please come to order. This public hearing has been called by the village council to consider the proposed village budget. Notice of this hearing was published in the Downers Grove Suburban Life newspaper on October 5th, 2016, and a certificate of publication is made part of these proceedings. One of these days I want to see that certificate of publication, just out of curiosity. I would like to summarize the procedures which we will follow for tonight's public hearing. First, David Fieldman, village manager, will provide an overview of the proposed budget. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the village council to ask any questions or make any comments regarding said budget. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the public to make statements or comments or to submit written statements or comments for the record concerning the proposed budget. Then I will ask once again if any members of the council wish to make a statement or ask a question on that topic. And after all that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. Please note that at this hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim written transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. And no broadcasts can be used of this meeting without the permission of Major League Baseball. However, recording of the procedures will be made on village equipment and retained until minutes of the hearing have been prepared and approved by the village council. So with those procedures being shared with everyone and everyone understanding how the game is played, I will now ask our village manager, David Fieldman, to please provide an overview of the proposed budget.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. As you noted earlier, the FY17 proposed budget was published on September 23rd on the village website and has been available for viewing and review since that time. It's been the subject of multiple public meetings and discussion throughout the month of October. We have a summary and question and answers that have come up during those meetings posted on our village website. We're happy to answer any questions the council or public may have tonight, but we have no further presentation to add to the previous meetings.
Thank you. Sticking to the procedures, that was the overview, which basically was an overview of the prior overview. And now there's an opportunity for members of the village council to ask any questions or make any comments. And again, just to emphasize for everyone watching at home or here in the audience today, this is probably the fourth or fifth opportunity in a stream of meetings that we've had to discuss the budget. So if there are no questions or comments, I would not be surprised by that because we've been discussing this for some time now. But are there any at this moment? Hearing none. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to the proposed fiscal 2017 budget for the village of Downers Grove? And again, there will be further opportunities for public comment and input before the approval, which is scheduled for
November 22nd.
November 22nd. So we still have a few weeks to comment on the budget, should anyone desire to do so. Now, since I've given my colleagues plenty of time to think of a question, does anybody have any final questions or comments with respect to the proposed fiscal 2017 budget? Hearing none, thank you. And, hold on, now I have to,
Mayor Tully, I move that we adjourn the public hearing.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The public hearing is adjourned. On to the meeting. Somebody wants to see the Cubs game. That moves us to item 7 on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8, our active agenda. We have 2 items on the active agenda. First, with respect to item 8A, do I have a motion to table this item to a date certain, that being November 22nd, 2016?
Mayor Tully, I move that we table the ordinance authorizing a special use permit for the property at 2300 Wisconsin Avenue until November 22nd.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the village council? I will just point out, for those who might be wondering, this is being done at the request of the petitioner. So it's an accommodation to the petitioner. Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That motion passes, and this item will reappear on our November 22nd active agenda. That brings us to 8B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending certain traffic provisions?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adopt an ordinance to amend certain traffic positions as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the village council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter passes unanimously, and that brings us to the end of our active agenda and to item 9, our first reading or workshop agenda. We have a couple of items on our workshop agenda tonight, and this is a little less formal part of our meeting where items are presented for discussion and consideration purposes only. There will be no final action taken on these items tonight. What we typically do here is begin with a presentation of the items by members of staff and or petitioners who are petitioning for the items, and then we'll open it up to council questions first, and then go back to the audience, and then come back to the village council as appropriate. So with that, I will turn over the presentation of these 2 items to our village manager, Mr. Fieldman.
Thank
Good
you, Mayor
evening.
Tully. Good evening. There are 2 items on tonight's first reading agenda, both historic landmark designations. Pinch hitting tonight for Stan Popovich is Rebecca Lightshoe, our senior planner, who will present both of these items.
Bam Bam is back in the lineup and hitting second.
That's right.
Welcome, Mr.
Gonna
Schwarber.
clean up.
Good evening, Ms. Lightshoe.
Good evening. It's nice to meet all of you, see all of you. I'm going to keep this short and sweet and mostly sweet, hopefully. And if I start to flush, which sometimes I have a tendency of, do not mistake it for nerves. Never. No, it's more my fervor to go see the Cubs. How about that? No. All right. So we'll go forward with the first one, featuring 710 Maple Avenue. This property is, the petition was put forth by the Hubers. We're very excited to bring this forward because this is a unique example of a landmark application compared to some of the other ones we've seen, all of which we are very excited about and supportive of. But this one is coming to you because it is falling under the criteria person of historical significance to the community. And this is a little bit different, so it has a different quality to it when we're evaluating it. But here we have the location of the property, 710 Maple Avenue, just to give you a little bit of some orientation here. So it's just on the north side of Maple Avenue, just around the corner from here. And it's actually just down the block from 701 Maple that was also recently landmarked earlier this year. So this is pretty exciting along this corridor. Just a closer locator map showing you the property in full. And this is I think a 1933 Sanborn map showing what it looked like in 1933 according to those wonderful archived resources. There are a couple of differences on the property from this map. Some porches have been reconfigured. The structure in the rear is no longer there. There's been an addition, although it doesn't affect, honestly, the discussion tonight. First off, because it's to the rear of the property if it was featuring the home itself, and secondly, because we're really talking about the significance of the person living who constructed this home. So this is a really neat, is it a sketch, a diagram? I don't even remember what the term is, the correct sketching term for it, but showing what the property looked like. I think this was a postcard, and this is something that was really exciting. The petitioners, with help from persons of the Edwards House, from the Gassens, multiple people kind of helped support this process and bring us some really good information. And what you'll like to see is right here, you'll see the train, which is just kind of a fun little, we all know it's here, and they were very aware it was there at the time too. You'll notice here, this front porch, we'll go through this, I'll just go through it now, but when we
I see the 526 was late back then.
Yeah, oh, awful, terrible. The switchyard wasn't working. But here we have a porch in its original form, and now there's actually an expanded porch. And some reports say that they think this might have been the original entrance, or it might have been a summer kitchen. There are different reports about what different features were on this particular building. But here's what we're here to talk about tonight, in addition to the importance of this home. First, let me emphasize this home was built circa 1856, so that by of itself is pretty important for our community. It's an old home for our area, and we don't have that many that were constructed in this exact time that are still remaining. So that is important. But in addition, we're talking about Captain Jordan James Cole. And he was, I'm just going to go through these, but for 3 reasons we believe that his home, the Hubers home, is worthy of being landmarked. And the first thing would be he was a captain of the semi-regular, I'm not going to go into his whole history because I know we're kind of trying to we have multiple things to talk about tonight. But Captain Cole was a captain of the semi-regular military organization called the Downers Grove Plowboys. So this was a group that stood up, and it was kind of paramilitary. They did marches, they practiced drills, and then in addition to that, which actually was they had a big they were very active in the campaign for Abraham Lincoln. So also local significance on the grander state stage and ultimately the grander national stage. They helped raise a company of troops, an official company of troops from DuPage County once news was received that Fort Sumter had fallen. And Company K was incorporated into the 13th Illinois Regiment, and J.J. Cole was elected to the position of second lieutenant. Now, the second point that I think is significant here is that a lot of us have heard of Captain Blanchard. He's again, for local to history, he was another person of notable, I don't want to say value, that's the wrong word, but he was important. He did great things in our community. And when Captain Blanchard succumbed to his wounds, Cole actually became the captain of Company K. And he was just amongst his peers at the time. I mean, he has all these wonderful quotes about his importance to his peers and to his troops. He was with his men in almost every engagement over the course of 3 years. The only time he was not was when he was captured and he was at Libby Prison, and he was a prisoner of war. And literally the day after he was released, he went back to his company and joined them right away. So that's another, the second item. And one of the quotes I think is a wonderful quote. It's from the History of DuPage County. It's from the Atlas, the 1874 Atlas. Here we find an instance of patriotism and devotion to the Stars and Stripes that has few parallels, speaking directly about Captain Cole. So then the third item is that after his service, he continued to feel compelled to be involved in bettering communities. He ended up becoming, through a political position, he ended up in 1866 to 69, he served as the supervisor, which at the time was the mayor, because it was unincorporated. So for Downers Grove, he served as the mayor, and then he served as a DuPage County clerk from 1869 to 1876. What's pretty cool about this is that he actually had the honor, as our wonderful clerk, to attest to the incorporation documents of the village of Downers Grove. So, here is this person who ends up participating in every meeting, very involved in the entire democratic process, and ended up actually having his signature on the development of our own community. So again, the 1874 Atlas, it states, "There is no servant of the people who is more courteous and obliging to all alike in his official and social relations than he. Such are the men that people honor." So we think, with the petitioner, that this is an excellent way to honor this individual. So I'm just going to go through a couple of pictures so you also know specifically the home we're talking about. If you look at this area and you look at the overall roof line, now of course there's a porch that has been added on in the history of the property. These dormers here were not part of the original home. But if you go back, you still know it's that house. I mean, yeah, so again, there are these two dormers that have been added here where these little like knee wall windows were, but it has that, it's the home. So it still has that retaining quality when you're going past it. Not only does it have the significance of the person, but you know the home. You know where it is, what it is. So again, we find that this meets both criteria. One, that it's over 50 years old, which it is, by far, having been constructed around 1856. And the second is that we find that it's a person of notable significance who's contributed to our community, which would be the person himself who built the home, who lived in the home. So I think that's it for that. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Leishu. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council?
Mayor?
Commissioner Waldeck.
Real quick, I'm glad you brought up the quote on J.J. Cole because with election time and voting going on, I thought it was a very appropriate quote. There is no servant of the people who is more courteous and obliging to all alike in his official and social relations than he. Such are the men that people honor. And I thought that was just a great quote and something that should apply today. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments, members of the council? I just want to add that, first of all, we're very grateful to the Hubers for bringing this forward. We're thrilled to see the number of residents that are taking advantage of the revised historic preservation ordinance and following the path that was blazed, the trail that was blazed, if you will, to see that more and more of our history is preserved. So we're very, very glad to see that, and thank you for undertaking that exercise. I also appreciate and fully understand all the work that goes into doing this kind of research, and I know you've already mentioned Amy Gasson and Cindy Zeski, who helped out with a lot of the research for this. And if I remembered this, because I was fortunate to catch part of the Architectural Design Review Board meeting when this was presented in great detail, and I actually would recommend, if you ever get the chance, to hear the full presentation, because it's quite fascinating, above and beyond the necessarily abbreviated one tonight. Did I hear correct that J.J. Cole's group or battalion was so anxious to sign up to get into the Civil War that they weren't ready to accept their group, and they actually had to make them wait? And they would have been J Company, but they ended up being K Company because they had to wait. Did I get that right?
I believe Ms. Huber stated that, yes, she had a really fascinating story
I thought that
about
was neat, because then it would have been J.J. Cole with J Company. Unfortunately, the union wasn't ready for them at that time. So I think it goes without saying that this is certainly someone of notable significance. It's sort of akin to having our version of a signer of the Declaration of Independence, having lived in and built this home. I think it's certainly deserving of the recognition that is being requested. Questions or comments from the audience, or anything further from the petitioner? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Amy Gasson, 5320 Benton Avenue. I first want to just start by thanking the Hubers for coming forward with this petition. Mrs. Huber got in touch with me, I think back in the spring. She was very, very concerned about the house and wanted to make sure that it was protected because of the significant person that lived there. And their passion behind the home and this man is just really amazing. I also want to thank Cindy Zeski. As you mentioned, she did much of the research for this. And, I think when Mrs. Huber always knew that J.J. Cole lived in the house, but I don't think anyone really realized how rich in history the house was until, we really started kind of researching its background. So to me, this is a really good lesson for homeowners to research their home. I think it's really important. You never know what happened there or who lived there. So I'm encouraging all homeowners to research their history if they can. And again, just thank you to the Hubers for doing this. It's very admirable that they are really focused and committed to protecting their home. So thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Hello again, Rich Calavani, 6825 Camden. I also want to commend the Hubers for their willingness to landmark their home and protect it for future generations. And then also Cindy and Amy for the significant volunteer work they did to drill down into the history. And it's just fascinating that all this happened in Downers Grove, and you just kind of harken back to brick streets and gas lights and horses and all that, and significant part of the Underground Railroad in Downers Grove and this Civil War history. So well done indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Cindy Zeski, 1130 Franklin Street. First of all, go Cubs. I just want to thank the Hubers for taking this process and moving forward, because it wasn't easy to do when you say you're not really landmarking the home itself, but the person that lived in it. And Amy and I, when we opened this book and started researching this person, we just kept going, this is fascinating. Can you believe this? Look at that, his signatures on our incorporation papers. So I just want to say, keep an open mind when you do look at it, because it is not, most of the homes that have been landmarked are for aesthetic. A lot of the architectural value and the aesthetic value, look at them and go, what a beautiful home, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is a beautiful home, but more so, it was the beautiful person that lived in it that I want you to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Maren Huber, 710 Maple Avenue. We have lived in this home. We have, as has been mentioned, we knew that it belonged to Captain Cole, but the help that Cindy and Amy gave me in researching this has given me a whole new depth of understanding, and I thank them. I thank Downers Grove for its revised landmarking procedures that has made it possible for us. And with that, I will conclude, but I do have a photograph of something you saw there, that original drawing of the house, and so I'd like to let you folks see this.
By all means,
That
thank
would be
you.
fine. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from members of the audience? The only thing I'll add is I really appreciate the research myself, because one thing I learned from seeing a very old plat was something that led me to possibly believe that the house that I live in right now is on land that was once owned by J.J. Cole, which I would not have known but for this process. Of course, I don't think anyone's going to be landmarking my home anytime soon. Thank you for sharing this. If there are no further questions from the council, then thank you very much. This will be on a future agenda, and we'll move to the next item, please. Equally exciting item, item 9B.
I don't say, I can't say good evening. Yes, so hello again. So 4540 Highland Avenue, the second property that we're looking to landmark. Staff is making recommendation along with the board that this is a representation of a distinguishing architectural style. So here we'll go through it. This petition was made by the Orwins, and again, we're very, very excited that they brought forth this one. It is really an exemplary example of an American Foursquare, which we're going to go through here. So again, 4540 Highland Avenue, obviously on Highland. It's just north of Lincoln, and it's on the west side of Highland. Here it is in a little bit more detail. You'll see that there's a garage to the rear. The home itself is facing Highland. And on a 1927 Sanborn map, this is showing the home. You can see the footprint is a little bit different. In the rear, there was a carriage house. There's now a garage that actually has been constructed with materials, similar materials to the home itself. So the petitioner took great care and I think went to great expense when making sure that the garage itself was compatible with the historic structure. So here, a little bit more detail. The blue is the existing home. That specifically is the part that is being landmarked. It is the part when you're on Highland Avenue, you're facing the house itself. That would be really ultimately the front facade is what you're looking at. The rear addition also was constructed and designed in complement to the main building, the existing building. So it does not diminish or take away from the integrity of the structure following our own landmark ordinance. So the areas in red are areas that have been altered. So the addition to the rear, and then again the garage. So you have to have it's nice to have a functional garage in modern day. So this garage itself was constructed, and I know the petitioner actually went to great extreme. They even looked at having the carriage house renovated. I mean, they had quotes. They sought that process first, really trying to do right by the property, just because of their sheer love of the home and trying to keep it true to its original vision. But at the end of the day, it really wasn't possible. And again, the garage is constructed, though, to be compatible. So here's just kind of a neat series of pictures that were provided by the petitioner. You have a picture from 1981. You have a picture from recent. And other than really the landscaping, and probably I shouldn't say other than, they did a lot of just general upkeep to the property and making sure it just was a fully functioning and welcoming home still. But really, it's seemingly identical when you just look at it from a superficial level from 1981. And prior to that, it's still identical. So from its actual original construction date, the windows, the door, the porch, the columns that support the porch, this is the home. And just to show a couple of the items that are featured, you have these double column and triple column supports for the porch, and those are I'm just going to say craftsman style, but yeah, they're indicative of the craftsman style Foursquare. And it's kind of hard to see here, but let me this picture. There are two different types of siding here. You have bevel siding that's below, and then you have shingle siding that's above. And this little band here that bisects it, that horizontal banding is also typical of a different kind of foursquare, which would be the prairie. You think of horizontal lines for prairie. So just kind of neat. And this is actually pretty, this is kind of typical, archetypal, I don't know if that's the right word, but of some different craftsman homes in this particular area, in this part of the E.H. Prince subdivision. They had some homes that had this combination of two different styles. And what you can also see here, you have a triple bay window, which again is another nice feature for a different American foursquare. So for all of these reasons, and I'm not even talking about the interior. The interior is not covered by the landmark ordinance, but just to give them kind of credit for all the work they've done, the interior itself has just a vast majority of the remaining features of the building, still brought up into kind of current day standards, but the home itself has so much that's unique and original to the structure itself. So looking at the criteria, the first one, is it over 50 years? Yes, it was constructed in 1914. The second one, we find it to be a significant example of an American foursquare. And if you actually look at the 2013 Historical, Architectural, and Historical Building Survey, which was, performed by professionals in that field, they found this to be, let me get the exact quote, because I think it's important. They found it to be an excellent foursquare with high integrity. And in the world of historic preservation and the Secretary of the Interior's design standards, when you talk about high integrity, that actually has like a qualifying meaning behind it. So that's pretty important that they found it in the survey to be of importance. And I think that's it. If you have any questions for me.
Thank you again, Ms. Lecce, for the presentation. Questions from members of the Village Council? I once again equally thank the Orwins for bringing this forward and for making sure that this is another gem in our community that is preserved for future generations. And thank you for all the efforts in trying to keep it a livable modern home and yet also one that reflects the wonderful architecture that was just described. So we greatly appreciate it. And thank you again for just adding to our growing portfolio of some really amazing places and buildings in our community. Questions or comments from members of the audience or from the petitioners? Good evening, welcome.
Hello again. Rich Calavani, 6825 Camden. Once again, standing in support of this. It's extra gratifying to see one of 62 significant properties that have been surveyed. Obviously, out of some 12,300 residential homes and 14,300 total properties in the village, being one of 62 is really significant in more ways than just architecturally. So we really appreciate the Orwins for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Good evening again.
Good evening again. Amy Gasson, 5320 Benton Avenue. I want to thank the Orwins for bringing forward this petition. My husband and I actually had the chance to tour their foursquare a few weeks ago, and as Rebecca said, they took much care in making sure that garage really matched the character of the existing home, but that's true in the house. Anything they did in the house, they really went above and beyond to make sure that it went well with the existing character. They really did an amazing job with the house. And then I just also want to note, kind of going along with what Mr. Calavani was saying, you all remember that in the 2013 survey there were 65 significant homes, and we have lost 3 of those significant homes, but with this petition coming forward we will have protected 3 when you take into account the Pattersons over on Prince and then the Zeskis house on Franklin. This will be the 3rd significant home. So to me, I think that's a very positive thing, and it highlights that we're making good progress. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions or comments from the audience? Final questions or comments from the Village Council?
All good.
That brings us to the end of our first reading of our workshop agenda.
Thank you, Mayor.
Took the words out of your mouth. Thank you. Those items will appear on a future agenda. And that brings us to item 10, the mayor's report. Just 2 things real quickly, both on the same topic. As my colleagues and others know, I am the municipal representative from District 3 to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee, which met this morning, and two things of note just to pass along as in my liaison role, if you will. Number one, with respect to floodplain mapping update, and I know this seems to be going on forever, and in some respects it is. Here's the latest update. County staff continues to work with the Illinois State Water Survey to come to a final resolution on all remaining comments regarding the preliminary floodplain maps. They're still on track to receive in late November 2016 all revised products, the maps, reports, et cetera, from the ISWS to review. The current schedule then calls for DuPage County return all comments to the ISWS in late December. After incorporating these comments, the ISWS will prepare to initiate the FEMA quality review process, beginning with various stages in January, and resolution letters will be prepared and reviewed and transmitted sometime in January, February of next year. So for those that have been tracking the floodplain mapping update process, that's the current timetable, and as we know more, I will share it with you. Further, wanted to let everyone know, because I've raised this as something to keep our eyes on, is that there will be a recommendation from the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee to the DuPage County Board with respect to priorities, top projects and priorities for stormwater. Basically, there have been 3 tiers that have been proposed based on a variety of input gathering and stakeholder input in terms of what are the stormwater needs in DuPage County and what are their relative priorities and what should be focused on. That conversation, for various reasons, has been postponed, partly because of just a lot of things. It has now been scheduled for the first meeting in December, and Chairman Zay said today that he expects that the committee will spend a fair amount of time talking about that topic. So once we have that meeting, I will let you know what the outcomes are. Of course, that will result eventually in a recommendation to the DuPage County Board. Of course, they are the ultimate say-so on that topic when it comes before them. But once again, given that this is an opportunity for municipalities to weigh in as well as members of the public, I wanted to make sure I shared that with everyone. And maybe what we can do is take the documents from the last iteration and recirculate them, not only within staff, but also to the village council, particularly because we have new members of the village council who perhaps may not have seen them, because I would like to be vigilant in my role as a representative of District 3 in terms of sharing our views on those subjects when they come up. That's all. Thank you. That's all I had on my report. That brings us to item 11, which is the village manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. We do have one item for action tonight on the manager's report. It has to do with the village facility project, and here to present information on this item is our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker.
Good evening, Mr. Baker.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. There's detailed information related to this item in the council packets, and it relates to action taken on October 11th, where the village council adopted a motion that directed staff to pursue an alternative option for mixed-use redevelopment of the Civic Center. As part of that action, council asked that the call for offers document be brought back for review before its release. So you will find that document included in the packet, along with information explaining how the responses will be reviewed and analyzed, and the decision-making criteria that will be applied. If approved, the motion is approved this evening, council can expect to see those fully analyzed proposals brought back in February of 2017. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Why don't we do this before we can start a discussion? Do I have a motion to direct staff to issue a call for offer/request for a proposal to purchase and develop a portion of the Civic Center property?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council direct staff to prepare a call for offers as presented.
Second. Second. Questions or comments from the village council?
Yes.
Commissioner Earl.
Once we get results from the call to offer, typically how long are those items good for? I mean, they would come back to us with a proposal. Typically, how long are the proposals good for?
So the proposals themselves will actually be submitted in December before the Christmas holiday season, and then the staff review will take place in January and then present the analysis in February. I would say they're probably good for 90 to 120 days. So action after that, if directed at that point in February, we would begin negotiating a redevelopment agreement consistent with the terms of the preferred proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the council? Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I am a bit concerned about the process and some comments. The referenda from the public indicated that facilities, that they did not approve of facilities over $46 million. So I keep that in mind. And as you look around our campus here, I think I might have said it once before, but it's a very blighted-looking campus, and could certainly use some improvement, and we do need to address our facilities. But we went through a process with property owned by the village once before. That was with Acadia on the Green, and I would hope that, you know, we went through a process there where where there was a lot of education for the public, getting a lot of input. I know some people may or may not have been thrilled with what happened with Acadia, but it's there. It seems to look like a fine building and fits. There was a lot of input. There was a process, and I think we've learned from that process. And as we go through getting bids and ideas and that we keep in mind that we own this property, and we have a lot to say on what goes in here, what looks right, what doesn't look right. And I'd like to, in some way, many ways, simulate what the process that we used for Acadia to get the best possible result. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White?
I don't see this vote as being on what the development should look like, what its strengths could be. I see this vote as being on the economic viability of a potential TIF financing option. And it's simply the economic viability. Whether it's an economically viable offer is what we need to decide. As of this evening, I do not know if this particular method will be economically viable or not. But without a proposal from a developer and without the opportunity for TIF consultants to review it, we'll never know. Now, once we if it's not economically viable, we're done. That's it. If it is economically viable, then we can look at the process of the type of development that best fits the location and go through all the site review. So I do not intend to do any site review decisions in February. The decision in February is economic viability as to whether sufficient revenue can be generated. And the economic viability question comes in because of the police station, that if we put the addition on the police station, then the ability to sell the parcels, the value the village can receive is very greatly reduced. I'm very far away from believing that this is the route we should follow, but I'm not prepared this evening to pull the plug and declare the whole process dead. And therefore, without the information on whether it's economically viable, I can't make a decision. Therefore, I want the information on whether or not it's economically viable, and to do that, we need bids from developers and we need TIF consultants. So based on that, I will be voting yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I thank Commissioner White for his comments. I think he's 100% right that we need information, and that's what it is that we're gathering. I just think we should be wary of hearing numbers like 46 million. The pertinent number is 14.5 million. We were going to spend 14.5 million on the police station and a renovation, and what we're trying to determine is whether or not we can spend that same 14.5 million along with other dollars that are not generated from our taxpayers. We're not looking to raise taxes and still get not just a renovated police station, but in fact combine two buildings and get economic development in our downtown area. It may well be that we can do that, and we need to find out whether or not that's possible, and that's the process we're undertaking. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Earl?
I do understand that the Village Hall definitely needs some serious work. whether it needs to be completely replaced, probably. The police station, the needs have been very obvious for a long time. I'm not denying the fact that both of these facilities have major needs. I do understand that there was already an approved plan for the police station, but I think that all in all, with all of the development we have going on downtown, I feel like we're jumping the gun just a bit, maybe a year, on going ahead with this, because we can't know everything that's going to happen in the next year with all the development that's going on downtown. I'm not saying we shouldn't ever do this. I just think that we're rushing. And I don't feel like this is the best thing to do at this time. And I would like to hold off on this and give it a little time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments?
One more.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you. Just to be clear, I do agree with Commissioner White that we need information. To me, it's much more than economic. I know we need the economics, see if the numbers do indeed work. My concern is long-term and process. Like I say, what's important to me is the referendum clearly said 46 million. They didn't care. It wasn't listed as whether it's taxpayer dollars or economic development. If you do a TIF, it's economic development. And so, you know, there's different checkbooks that we have, different pots of money. And so, you know, if it isn't taxpayers, you know, if you spend too much, it comes out of the taxpayers or the residents, the citizens, one way or the other. So, you know, that's a concern of mine. The process is a concern of mine, but I will support, you know, I will support getting more information. And to me, it's much more than economic. It's our downtown that we're concerned about. So what goes in this property is important to me, and not just on an economic value, but what it does for the entire village, for all of our residents, and not just economics. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I will then just add a clarification or maybe a reiteration of my thought process here for both my colleagues and for the public. And I just want to start out by, as I like to do, use an analogy. Someone could ask me right now, would I sell my house? And I would probably say, of course not. I just built it 3 years ago. Why would I do that? But the real answer is, well, it depends on what the offer is. I cannot say that under no circumstances would I not sell my house. To depend on the offer I got. And that's kind of where my mind is right now. I don't think any of us, I don't think anyone in the community could say that under no circumstances would we go forward with a proposal different than the renovation project that is on the board right now for the police station. We haven't seen what the offer is. And I think all we're saying, and what I'm hearing in different ways from different people, is kind of the same thing. Is, well, I'd like to see the offer, and then we can talk about things such as the process for getting it to look like what we want, if we decide to go down that path. Or we may decide not to go down that path at all. I'm obviously, everyone is cognizant with the recent referendum, but the referendum was one that took place in the context of a concrete proposal being on the table. People knew what it was that was proposed, and they voiced their opinions about various aspects of it, pro and con. This is completely different because there's no proposal on the table. We don't know what the proposal is yet. So no one can weigh in and say that under no circumstances they would not support it, or that they would support it because they haven't seen it yet. All we're asking for here is, all I'm asking for here is I want to see the proposal. I want to see the best possible offer that may be out there, and as Commissioner White says, if it ain't good enough, then we go about our business. But we just don't know yet. All I want to know is what's out there. There may be an opportunity to do something that is very different than what the referendum addressed. And in fact, just by location alone, we know it will be. It could solve many other things that have been left unsolved by the police department renovation. Other issues with the whole area that could add additional benefits to this community, some of which people have been asking for decades. And if we were to give up an opportunity to potentially address those from a public safety and other standpoint, I think that would be a shame. And again, that may not be possible, but I don't know. We may have some partnership opportunities where we can solve the needs of more than one taxing body in this community in one fell swoop, which I think would be something that would be in the best interests of our shared constituents. We may or may not be able to do that, I don't know, but I'd like to see whether we do have the opportunity. And certainly I want to see if we can do this at a cost and at a risk tolerance level that is vastly improved over what it was that the community had a tough time swallowing last year, or last time, I should say. And again, I just want to see what is the best proposal that we can get. And based on an assessment of that, then we can decide how we go forward. And to Commissioner Waldak's point, I remember the Acadia process very well, and I also remember we didn't go with the first proposal. We thought we liked the first proposal, and we dug into it, and we decided after a bit, you know, we don't like the first proposal so much, and we brought back the number 2 person. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that here, should we go down that path. We'll see, but the first question is, let's see what's being proposed, and then we can see whether it's worth going into that level of detail. And certainly, I agree with Commissioner Waldak that that process will necessarily be one involving a lot of public input. And here, unlike other projects, we have a great deal of control over what things look like and how they lay out. The other thing is, I'm also not concerned about moving too fast, although I'm certainly empathetic with Commissioner Earl's thoughts. And just to use the same analogy, I don't view this as jumping the gun because I don't think we've even lined up at the starting line yet. We're going to find out whether this is a race we even want to run, and if we do, then we can look at timing if necessary, although I think there are some exterior factors that come to play here, but I don't even think we're there yet. I really just want to know as quickly as possible without too much more delay, because if we end up not doing something else and we end up going forward with the police renovation, I'd like to make that decision in a way that we can all sleep at night and explain to our constituents why we chose not to even consider something, and go forward with that other project as quickly as possible and not delay any further, or at least more than necessary, the renovation of the police station. So that's one of the other reasons why I'd like at least this stage to go quickly, or as quickly as reasonable, so that we at least know what we're dealing with. Then we can, if we decide it's something worth pursuing, we can always look at some of the other issues as well that I think a number of us have raised. Well, just to be very clear, that's where my head is, and those are my expectations. And with that, I will ask for a roll call on the motion, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Nay.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter passes 5-1. And that brings us to the end of the manager's report, unless you had something else, Mr. Fieldman.
Nothing further, Mayor, thank you.
All right, very good. And I don't know why we keep keeping you off the list, but village attorney's report, Ms. Petrarca?
No report, Mayor, thank you.
All right, very good. Item 12, council member reports. Any members of the village council have any items they would like to report out in their liaison role or otherwise? Commissioner Waldeck.
Just a reminder that we don't have a meeting next week because it's election time. So everybody get out and vote.
Yes, in fact, they were doing that robustly earlier tonight. There was a line practically out the door here at Village Hall for early voting, so certainly people are paying heed to your admonition. Any other council member reports, rather than going up and down the line? Commissioner Barnett?
Just says 3-0 Cubs.
Awesome. Go Cubs.
Go Cubs.
With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Good night and go Cubs.